The patrol ships swarmed behind him like a pack of hunting beasts, their engines cutting streaks of blue across the jagged expanse of the asteroid belt. Yarrick Vaughn gripped the worn controls of his ship, the Wayfarer, and cursed softly as another warning klaxon echoed through the cockpit. A piece of fractured rock larger than a frigate spun lazily past, close enough that the ship's shield screamed under the impact of dust and debris. "Come on, girl," he muttered, patting the cracked console as if his ship could hear him. "Just a little further." The scanner pulsed again, showing 3 galactic enforcement vessels tightening their formation. He had outrun them before, but this time he had pushed his luck too far. The contraband in his cargo hold, rare Orion root extracts and a few crates of outlawed Terran whiskey, would fetch more than enough to pay his debts, if he could just deliver it. A sharp warning beam tore across his viewport, painting the cockpit in a blinding flash. The comm hissed to life. "Unregistered vessel. This is galactic enforcement. Power down and prepare to be boarded." Yarrick smirked despite the tension tightening his chest. "Not today." He threw the Wayfarer into a dive, engines straining as he threaded the ship between 2 tumbling asteroids. Shards of ice and rock pinged off the hull like angry hailstones. The patrols fanned out, determined not to lose him, but he was already searching ahead for a sliver of hope. That was when he saw it. On the edge of his display, nestled into the upper residential ring of Nexus Station, a tiny maintenance lock blinked faintly. The official docks were crawling with enforcement patrols, but this little airlock, barely big enough for utility craft, looked like salvation. It was either that or surrender. Yarrick powered down the main drives, switched to thrusters, and let inertia drift the ship toward the target. The patrol vessels shot past, overshooting his position, searching for a chase that was already over. With a bone-jarring clang, the Wayfarer latched onto the station's service lock. "Sorry, girl," he whispered to the ship. "I'll be back." Grabbing his emergency pack, a compact blaster, and a small case holding the most valuable samples, Yarrick cycled the lock and stepped into the dimly lit service corridor. The air was stale, metallic with hints of disinfectant. His handheld scanner pointed him deeper into the high-security residential sector, perfect for a buyer with connections among Nexus's wealthy elite. He crept through the narrow ducts until a glow filtered through a vent ahead. Carefully, Yarrick pushed the grate aside. The chamber beyond was opulent, drenched in soft lighting that glimmered against crystal furnishings and artifacts from across the galaxy. Windows stretched wall to wall, showing the silent ballet of asteroids gliding past. Wealth practically oozed from every surface. And it appeared empty. Yarrick slipped through, landing quietly on the polished floor. He spotted a communication console across the room, his chance to contact the buyer, arrange a transfer, and maybe buy himself a little time. But as his fingers brushed the panel, the lights brightened with sudden intensity. "Don't move." The voice was melodic, sharp as a blade's edge. Yarrick froze, his hand hovering near his blaster. Slowly, he turned. Standing in the doorway was a figure unlike any he had seen before. Her skin gleamed a smooth, luminous green, shifting faintly as the room's lights caught it. From her head trailed 2 long tendrils the color of twilight, resting elegantly against her shoulders. Her deep cerulean eyes watched him with a mixture of calculation and restrained curiosity. The sheer fabric she wore draped her tall, athletic frame, revealing more than it concealed. But it wasn't her beauty alone that made Yarrick's breath hitch. It was the unmistakable aura of authority she carried, every movement radiating confidence. "This is awkward," Yarrick said, forcing a crooked smile. "Wrong turn." "Wrong turns do not usually involve ventilation shafts," she replied, her tone edged with danger. Yarrick considered his options. He could draw his blaster, but that would be suicide. He could run, but she would have already called security if she intended to. So instead, he raised his hands in mock surrender. Would you believe I'm here for an air quality inspection? A sound slipped from her lips, almost a laugh. Humans and your strange humor. She stepped further into the room, her gait fluid and predatory, circling him as if evaluating prey. Do you know whose quarters you've invaded? I'm guessing someone important, Yarrick replied, watching her carefully. I am Solara, she said finally. Daughter of High Strategist Kaler of the Dominion. The name hit him like a blow. The Dominion was infamous, its influence stretching across half the Orion arm, its hostility toward humans legendary. And now he had stumbled into the private chambers of one of its most protected heirs. Yarrick gave a nervous chuckle. Well, in that case, I should probably be leaving. Stay. The single word snapped through the air like a command. Yarrick froze again, pulse pounding. She studied him, eyes narrowing, then, unexpectedly, crossed to a cabinet. She poured a glowing blue liquid into 2 glasses and returned. Perhaps we will discuss your trespassing, over a drink. Yarrick arched an eyebrow, cautiously accepting the glass. Their fingers brushed, and a strange spark shot up his arm. From the slight hitch in her breath, she felt it too. He raised his glass. To wrong turns. Her lips curved faintly. To curiosity. As the luminescent liquid burned warmly through his veins, Yarrick realized with a jolt of unease and fascination, this encounter was about to change everything.
The strange drink still lingered on Yarrick's tongue, sharp and electric, as though tiny sparks had woven themselves into the liquid. It spread a pleasant heat through his chest, dulling the tension in his shoulders without erasing the fact that he was in one of the most dangerous positions of his life. Solara, daughter of the Dominion's high strategist, leaned back in her chair with effortless grace. Her green skin shimmered softly beneath the dim lighting, a living canvas that seemed to shift with each flicker of her mood. Her head tendrils coiled lazily, almost hypnotic, as her deep blue eyes studied him like a puzzle she intended to solve. You carry yourself with arrogance, human, she said, swirling the glowing liquid in her glass. Not many would stroll into the quarters of Kaler's bloodline and offer jokes in place of apologies. Yarrick smirked. Arrogance keeps me alive. Fear just gets you caught. Perhaps. Her voice softened slightly, though it carried an undercurrent of sharpness. And yet, you interest me. That caught him off guard. He had expected threats, interrogation, or a quick call to security. Instead, she was testing him, probing, as if his very presence was a puzzle she didn't yet want to solve too quickly. Yarrick took another sip of the drink, feeling its heat rise in his cheeks. Interest can be dangerous. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. So can curiosity. But my kind thrives on it. She set her glass aside and rose slowly, moving toward him with the kind of deliberate pacing that sent his pulse racing. Yarrick tried to keep his expression casual, but every instinct screamed at him to be cautious. He'd dealt with smugglers, pirates, bounty hunters, even Dominion patrols before, but nothing prepared him for this. Solara circled him the way a predator circles prey, her tendrils trailing faint ripples of iridescent color that betrayed her emotions more than her carefully measured words. You do not quake in my presence. That is, unusual. Humans are unpredictable, yes, but they are rarely bold in Astrian space. Maybe I'm an exception. She stopped in front of him, tilting her head slightly, eyes glimmering as they caught his reflection. I suspect you are. Which is why I have not yet called for guards. Yarrick let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. I should thank you for that. Do not thank me, Solara murmured. Not yet. I have not decided what you are to me. An intruder? A danger? Or, her hand lifted, fingers hovering just shy of his arm, close enough that he felt the warmth radiating from her skin. A curiosity worth keeping. Yarrick didn't move. The hum of the station, the faint echo of distant engines, the glowing cityscape beyond the panoramic glass. All of it seemed to fade beneath the gravity of the moment. He was no stranger to attraction. Spaceports were full of fleeting liaisons, faces and names blending together between jobs. But this was different. This was dangerous in a way that sent a chill down his spine even as desire tightened in his chest. Do you know, Solara continued, her voice dropping into a near whisper, what is said of humans in Dominion teachings? Something flattering, I'm sure, Yarrick replied lightly. Her laugh was soft, musical. That you are reckless, violent, that you multiply without restraint and consume worlds like fire devours dry grass. That you breed indiscriminately. And what do you think? Yarrick asked, careful to keep his tone even. I think, her fingers finally brushed against his arm, sending a spark racing up his nerves. I would rather form my own opinion. Yarrick caught her hand gently, studying the sharp contrast of her luminous green skin against his rougher, human complexion. For a fleeting moment, he allowed himself to forget the cargo waiting in his ship, the patrols searching the docks, the fact that she was the daughter of one of humanity's fiercest enemies. I can help with that, he said quietly. Her lips curved into something more dangerous than a smile, it was an invitation wrapped in a challenge. Humans are forbidden in Astrian court. Our teachings say such relations are taboo. Some of the best things usually are, Yarrick murmured. Her eyes darkened, pupils dilating as her tendrils rippled with shifting colors. She leaned closer, close enough that her scent, something exotic and intoxicating, like crushed blossoms under starlight, filled his lungs. You test limits, Yarrick Vaughn. I live by them, he admitted, his heart pounding. Their lips met, tentative at first, then with a heat that surged far beyond curiosity. The spark that had danced between them flared into a storm. Her skin was warmer than his, carrying a faint hum of energy that made every brush of contact electric. When they broke apart, Solara's breathing was uneven, her eyes glowing faintly as though lit from within. She pulled back just slightly, enough to let him see the turmoil flickering beneath her regal composure. You should not be here, she whispered. Then why haven't you thrown me out? Yarrick countered softly. Her silence was answer enough. For the first time since stepping into her quarters, Yarrick realized the danger wasn't just from the Dominion, or from the patrols, or from the risk of discovery. It was from the way she looked at him, with defiance, with curiosity, and with something deeper that neither of them dared put into words. And despite every warning in his bones, Yarrick knew he wasn't leaving. Not yet. Yarrick awoke to the gentle thrum of Nexus Station's artificial dawn. For a heartbeat, he forgot where he was, the soft bedding beneath him, the scent of alien perfumes lingering in the air, the faint aftertaste of that electric drink on his lips. Then the memories crashed back, the kiss, the heat, the reckless surrender to curiosity that had spiraled into something far more intimate. He turned his head, half expecting to see Solara beside him. The sheets were still warm, but empty. Pulling himself upright, Yarrick let his gaze wander across the chamber. The place was more magnificent in the daylight cycle, every surface reflecting the pale glow from the panoramic windows. It was the kind of wealth and status he'd spent his whole life sneaking past, never touching, until now. The door to the adjoining chamber slid open, and Solara stepped through. She wore a shimmering robe that clung to her tall frame, droplets of water glistening against her green skin, her tendrils slicked back as if she had just bathed. Yet something in her posture made Yarrick's stomach knot. Her stride was too measured, her eyes too cold. Good morning, he said, forcing a grin. For a moment, I thought you'd abandoned me. Her gaze snapped to him like the edge of a blade. Abandon you? No, human. I am deciding whether to destroy you. The grin slipped. I thought we were past the human thing. Past? Her voice sharpened. You presume too much. She moved closer, and Yarrick saw her tendrils shift, colors rippling in jagged waves of red and orange. Anger. Disgust. Betrayal. I don't understand, Yarrick said carefully, raising his hands. Last night, you wanted this too. Her jaw tightened. I invited you to share pleasure, Yarrick Vaughn. But you crossed into a sacred passage. A channel not meant for fleeting indulgence, but for life-bonding rituals. The words hit him like a gut punch. Wait. You mean? Her eyes blazed. That passage is how my people commune with our ancestors. It is sanctified, reserved for ceremonies binding two souls for life. And you, her voice broke, fury and something almost like grief twisting together. You defiled it. The realization struck with horrifying clarity. In the heat of passion, navigating unfamiliar anatomy in the dark, he had stumbled into a transgression of cosmic scale. What for him had been just another act of intimacy had, for her, been sacrilege. Stars, Yarrick whispered. Solara, I had no idea. Humans, we don't. We don't have anything like that. It wasn't disrespect. It was ignorance. Her hand darted to the wall, pressing against a hidden panel. From it she withdrew a ceremonial blade, its edge humming with crackling energy. In a blink she had it leveled at his throat, the tip close enough that he felt its heat singe the hairs on his neck. Insolent human, she hissed, her voice vibrating with restrained fury. You dare to excuse sacrilege with ignorance? Yarrick froze, every instinct screaming at him not to move. One twitch and the blade would end him. I swear, he said hoarsely. I didn't know. How could I? You're the first Astrian I've been with. And I'm the first human for you. We were both walking blind. The pressure at his throat eased a fraction. Her eyes, still blazing with hurt, narrowed as though weighing his words. The sacred channel is where our essences intertwine, she said, voice tight. It is the foundation of union. You cannot undo what you've done. Yarrick swallowed hard. So what does that mean? Did I just, what? Marry you by accident? Her lips curled in bitter humor. Worse. You bound us in a way without honor, without ritual. It is desecration. Before he could answer, a series of piercing tones echoed through the chamber. Solara's eyes widened in alarm, her tendrils flattening. Security scan, she whispered, blade still trembling in her grip. They've detected your ship's docking signature. A voice rang out over the comm, Lady Solara, this is station security. Our instruments register an unauthorized human presence in your quarters. Confirm your status immediately. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Solara lowered the blade, though she kept it within reach. Her mind was already shifting, faster than his, calculating the fallout. If they discover you, you will be executed, she said coldly. And I, disgraced beyond repair. Then what do we do? Yarrick whispered. She turned toward him, her expression sharpening into something resolute. We lie. Her voice lifted, calm and aristocratic. One moment, officer. Then she turned back to Yarrick, eyes hard. Get dressed. Quickly. He obeyed, tugging on his scattered clothes while his pulse thundered in his ears. Solara smoothed her robe, composure returning like a mask snapping into place. You are no longer a smuggler, she said. You are my consort. A representative of the Earth colonies, here at my invitation. A diplomatic experiment. Yarrick nearly laughed at the absurdity of it, but her glare silenced him. You think they'll buy that? They must. The comm crackled again, Lady Solara, confirm your safety. Do you require assistance? She straightened, every line of her body radiating the confidence of Dominion nobility. Enter, officer. The human is my guest. The chamber doors slid open. 2 Astrian guards strode in, their uniforms immaculate, weapons gleaming at their sides. Their eyes locked instantly onto Yarrick with a mixture of suspicion and disgust. Lady Solara, the taller one said, bowing stiffly. We detected an unauthorized human presence. Protocol demands clarification. As I said, she replied coolly, placing a deliberate hand on Jarek's arm, he is here under my authority. Yarek Vaughn, envoy of the Earth Colonial Alliance. The guard's eyes narrowed. No envoy was registered with Station Command. That is because this arrangement is unofficial, Solara countered smoothly. A personal initiative. Cultural exchange before political commitment. The guard hesitated, clearly unsettled. His companion checked a datapad, frowning. No record exists of this Yarek Vaughn in diplomatic files. Yarek cleared his throat, forcing confidence into his voice. That's because I was invited directly. My people prefer to test the waters quietly before drowning in protocol. Solara's grip on his arm tightened, an unspoken warning. He forced a charming smile. The taller guard shifted uneasily, clearly torn. Lady Solara, I will have to file a report. Of course, she said with regal finality. But you will also note that I, daughter of Kaler, authorized this. My father has often spoken of bridging gaps with the Earth colonies. I am simply accelerating the process. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, they nodded. Very well. The human ship must be moved to an authorized dock immediately. It will be done, Solara said firmly. Now, if that is all. They bowed and withdrew. The door slid shut behind them. Yarek let out a long, shaky breath. That was close. Solara's tendrils pulsed a troubled indigo. It is not over. My father will hear of this. And when he does, she trailed off, eyes narrowing. Yarek met her gaze, heart pounding but steady now. Then we make the lie true. For however long we need it to be. For the first time, she faltered, studying him as though unsure whether to laugh or scream. You are insane. Probably, Yarek admitted with a grin. But sometimes madness is the only plan left. The borrowed formalwear itched. Yarek tugged at the stiff collar, feeling every seam like a reminder that he didn't belong. The outfit, a deep blue tunic lined with silver, marked with the stylized patterns of Astrian nobility, had once belonged to a Centurion ambassador who was roughly his size. Solara had insisted he wear it. To her eyes, it transformed him from a half-reckless smuggler into something resembling a diplomat. To him, it felt like a costume in a play where the stakes were life and death. Stop fidgeting, Solara murmured as she adjusted the drape of her own gown. The fabric shimmered like liquid emerald, perfectly matched to the natural radiance of her green skin. Silver chains threaded through her head tendrils, ringing faintly when she moved. Every motion spoke of practiced nobility. I'm trying, Yarek muttered, forcing his hands to his sides. But in my line of work, discomfort usually means something's about to go wrong. She shot him a look both sharp and weary. Tonight, discomfort is survival. If you falter, even once, the illusion crumbles. He nodded, though his stomach churned. They had survived the immediate scrutiny of station guards, but Solara was right, the bigger test was still to come. Her father, High Strategist Kaler, had already agreed to humor her initiative. He wanted to see for himself whether a human envoy could prove useful in the Dominion's delicate web of politics. That meant Yarek was expected to walk into a diplomatic reception filled with Astrian aristocrats and survive the kind of scrutiny that no smuggler was ever trained for. The doors to the grand hall slid open with a whisper. Jarek's breath caught. The reception chamber glittered with opulence, every surface alive with shifting holographic constellations. Projected stars wheeled lazily across the vaulted ceiling, simulating the Dominion's ancestral skies. Silver and crystal sculptures floated on anti-grav pedestals, refracting light in hypnotic patterns. Around them, nobles mingled. Green-skinned Astrians draped in fabrics more extravagant than anything Yarek had ever seen. Their laughter, their gestures, even the angle of their bows radiated ritual and tradition. And every one of them turned to look at him. "Smile," Solara murmured without moving her lips. "But not too widely. Remember what I told you, no baring of teeth unless you wish to appear aggressive." Yarrick forced his mouth into what he hoped passed as polite neutrality. He fought the instinct to map every exit and weapon placement, though his smuggler's mind did it anyway. They stepped deeper into the hall. A few nobles inclined their heads towards Solara, their expressions unreadable as their eyes flicked briefly to the human at her side. Others whispered behind jeweled hands, their tendrils flickering with subtle ripples of disdain. "Relax," Solara said softly, her own smile unwavering as she acknowledged a passing dignitary. "This is nothing compared to what comes next." "What comes next?" Yarrick muttered under his breath. "My father," she replied. Before he could answer, a voice cut across the chamber, smooth but dripping with suspicion. "Lady Solara. I had heard rumors. And now I see they are true." Yarrick turned to find an older Astrian approaching, his stride brisk and his tendrils tightly wound with control. His robes were dark, trimmed in crimson, a color Solara had warned Yarrick signified high ministerial authority. "Minister Valor," Solara greeted, her bow precise. "May I present Yarrick Vaughn, envoy of the Earth Colonial Alliance." Yarrick bowed at the angle she had drilled into him, not too deep, not too shallow, long enough to show deference but short enough to imply self-respect. "Minister. An honor." Valor's eyes narrowed. "An envoy?" Curious, then, that no alliance communique announced such an appointment. Or that our records show no human by that name attached to diplomatic channels. Jarrek's pulse hammered, but he forced a calm tone. "Some bridges must be built quietly, Minister. My people value discretion, especially when extending hands toward those who have not always been welcoming." The minister's tendrils rippled in faint red skepticism. "Discretion easily conceals deceit. Forgive me if I question the word of an unannounced intruder." Before Yarrick could craft an answer, a deeper voice silenced the chamber. "Minister Valor. You will find that questioning my daughter's judgment requires more caution." The crowd parted as High Strategist Kaler entered. He was taller than the guards, his frame wrapped in ceremonial armor rather than robes, a gleaming blade strapped across his back. His eyes, icy blue and merciless, swept the room before fixing on Yarrick. Every instinct screamed at Yarrick to shrink under that gaze, but he forced himself to stand tall, shoulders squared. "Father," Solara said, bowing low. "May I present Yarrick Vaughn?" Kaler studied him with unblinking intensity. "So this is the human who trespassed into Dominion space, and my daughter's chambers." The hall froze, whispers rustling like dry leaves. Yarrick felt sweat bead at his collar, but he met Kaler's eyes. "High Strategist, I meant no disrespect. I came here at Solara's invitation, hoping to learn more about your people. If my method lacked proper channels, I can only say it was born of urgency, not insult." Kaler said nothing for a long, suffocating moment. Then, to Jarrek's shock, the corners of his mouth curved, barely. "Bold. Most humans I've known quake when faced with Dominion steel. You, at least, speak." Yarrick let out the faintest breath. "But words are smoke," Kaler continued. "Tonight, you will show whether they hold flame." He gestured toward a cluster of nobles gathered near a hovering constellation display. "Walk with me, human. Tell me what your kind makes of the Orion border dispute." The minister's glare followed as Kaler turned, expecting Yarrick to fall in step. Solara gave him the smallest nod of encouragement. Yarrick straightened his borrowed collar, forced his smirk back into place, and stepped forward. The smuggler had just been invited into the lion's den, and this time, bluffing wasn't just survival. It was war. Kaler's stride cut through the sea of nobles like a blade. Yarrick followed half a step behind, aware that every pair of eyes in the reception hall tracked his movements. His smuggler's instincts screamed at him to vanish, to find a shadowed corridor and slip away unnoticed. But those days of running were over, at least for tonight. Tonight he was an envoy, a mask he had no choice but to wear. The strategist stopped before a hovering holodisplay of the Orion sector. Dozens of luminous markers pulsed across it, outposts, trade routes, contested borders. Kaler gestured, and the nobles gathered leaned in respectfully. "Tell me, human," Kaler said, his voice carrying easily across the chamber, "what do you see?" Yarrick studied the map, his mind racing. He wasn't a diplomat, he wasn't even a soldier. He was a smuggler who had slipped through this region countless times, dodging both Dominion and human patrols. And maybe that was an answer. "I see choke points," he said at last, tracing a hand through the air where the hollow reacted to his gesture. "This lane here, too narrow, too heavily monitored. And this crossing, your patrols are predictable. Anyone with enough nerve and a fast ship can cut through." He tapped another route, one he had used himself. "Here. That's the gap both sides keep missing." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Solara's eyes flickered with alarm, but Kaler's expression remained unreadable. "You speak like a smuggler," Kaler said finally. Yarrick swallowed. "I speak like someone who's lived it. Trade, legal or not, always finds a way. Walls and guns slow people down, but they don't stop them. If you want peace, if you want real control, you need understanding before enforcement." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then Kaler's lips curved faintly. "Honest. Perhaps too honest. But useful." The nobles exchanged looks, some scandalized, others intrigued. Yarrick forced himself not to glance at Solara, though he felt her gaze burning into him. The rest of the evening blurred into a dance of half-truths and improvised answers. Kaler guided him from group to group, introducing him not as a trespasser, but as the envoy from Earth. Ministers tested him with questions sharpened like knives. Nobles weighed him with thinly veiled disdain. Every response he gave was a bluff balanced on the edge of disaster. He drew on every ounce of charm he possessed, turning his smuggler's knack for persuasion into a weapon. More than once, Solara had to intervene, subtle corrections when he held a cup wrong, a whispered warning before he accidentally insulted someone's lineage. Yet, despite the tension, Yarrick began to feel something strange, momentum. The more he leaned into the role, the more convincing it became. At one point, Minister Vaylor confronted him again, eyes glittering. "Your people breed chaos. Why should the Dominion lower itself to entertain talks with you?" Jarrek's reply came without hesitation. "Because chaos is honest. You can't predict us, you can't control us, but you can learn from us. And maybe, just maybe, we can learn from you. Isn't that what diplomacy is supposed to be?" Gasps rippled. Some nobles looked horrified, others grudgingly impressed. Kaler studied him for a long time before finally giving a single nod. By the time the reception waned, Jarrek's nerves were stretched to breaking. He felt as though he had walked a tightrope strung over a black hole. Yet somehow, impossibly, he was still standing. As the nobles dispersed, Kaler placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "You have spirit, human. Reckless, undisciplined spirit. But perhaps that is what this galaxy requires. You will remain under my daughter's patronage. We will see if your fire burns steady or sputters out." Yarrick inclined his head, masking the surge of relief that threatened to show on his face. "Thank you, High Strategist." When Kaler departed, leaving only shadows and fading light sculptures behind, Yarrick finally let out the breath he'd been holding. "You're mad," Solara whispered, though her tendrils rippled with colors that betrayed more than just anger. "Maybe," Yarrick admitted, his grin tired but genuine. "But it worked, didn't it?" She stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head with a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. "You've entangled us in a web of lies that may strangle us both." Or, Yarrick said softly, maybe we just gave ourselves a chance. The chamber fell silent around them, heavy with the weight of everything unspoken, the forbidden night they shared, the lie they had built together, and the uncertain path that stretched ahead. For the first time in years, Yarrick felt something more than survival clawing at his chest. Something dangerously close to hope. And so, Yarrick Vaughn, smuggler, liar, accidental diplomat, found himself standing at the crossroads of two civilizations. What began as a desperate escape through an asteroid field had become something far more complicated, a fragile masquerade, woven from lies and stolen moments, now binding him to one of the Dominion's most powerful families. Solara, heir to her father's authority and protector of her own reputation, had every reason to destroy him. Instead, she shielded him, gambling that curiosity and defiance might outweigh tradition and fury. Together, they had fooled guards, faced ministers, and even stood before Kaler himself. Yet their deception was a flame dancing in a storm, brilliant, but perilously close to being snuffed out. For Yarrick, the path ahead was uncertain. He had no training in diplomacy, no allies in these halls of power, and no guarantee that tomorrow wouldn't bring his unmasking. But he also had something new, purpose. For the first time, survival wasn't just about the next run, the next shipment, the next narrow escape. It was about proving himself, not only to Solara's people, but perhaps to her as well. And for Solara, who had spent her life bound by ritual and expectation, the reckless human intruder had become something she could not easily define, threat, partner, or maybe the catalyst for change her people secretly needed. What will become of their fragile alliance? Will their lies hold long enough to spark something real, or collapse under the crushing weight of truth? Only one thing is certain, the galaxy has a strange way of turning wrong turns into destiny. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with fellow sci-fi fans. Every bit of support helps us keep bringing you more thrilling adventures among the stars.